IVM.
Welcome to Audiogyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Lokesh Karekar with us on Audiogyan. He's one of India's leading visual and communication design artists, an alumnus of Sir J.J. School of Applied Arts and a founder of LOCOPOPO, and also co-founded the 100% Zine. He loves exploring varied mediums. His illustration captures an essence of people, places and objects. Lokesh explores fun, colorful compositions through abstract forms and free-flowing lines. He was also featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 with leading young entrepreneurs in India. And today we are here to discuss what does it take to become an illustrator. So thank you, Lokesh, for giving us your time, and it's a real pleasure to have you on Audiogyan.
Thank you for calling me here.
Yeah. So I've come up with few questions, and let's see how do we take this forward. But to set the context, I wanted to ask you like a broad question, which you can take a stance on it, like whether you want to go philosophical or much more practical. But what qualifies an illustration? Like how do you categorize illustration or graphics, or how does that scheme of things, and how do you perceive that?
I think for me, anything is drawn is basically illustration for me. Like anything is drawn on paper or like any medium. Like it can be digital or it can be. So I think that's illustration for me. And I think to be able to be like an illustrator, you should be able to draw first, because drawing is a very human activity, which makes you artist and which makes you illustrator. Yeah, so it can be digital art or it can be drawing on paper, canvas, any medium is fine. But I think the drawing makes you illustrator, and I think that's the fun of it. I think philosophically speaking, I think to be able to visualize certain topics is which makes you like an illustrator, because when you're illustrating, you're dealing with different kind of topics, like from day-to-day life to some specific topic for like the publication illustration, for example. So to be able to visualize that topic and then translate it into like the illustration.
Okay.
So that also, like conceptually speaking, you should be able to conceptualize the illustration. Like drawing is one part, and ideating the illustration is one part. So,
but does illustration need to be? Can it be objective? Can it be subjective? How does that work?
Yeah, actually, that depends on the purpose of the illustration. Like if you're creating an illustration for somebody or like for some client or some. So
proper brief.
Yeah. So brief given illustration is something which should be objective, because that particular illustration has to play like a different roles. Like that illustration should communicate something. That illustration should evoke something. So the role of the illustration becomes much more larger than just a celebration of forms and color. So that way, and like. In case of personal illustration, it can be anything. Like it can be your personal topic, or it can be, you can explore the way you want, in the way you take it forward.
Interesting. And so what goes into a mind of an illustrator? And especially when I've been following your work, so like not to a very greater degree, but yeah. So I've seen there are different forms of illustration, right? There's sometimes line, there's solid colors, there's intricate design, there's something which Sajid Wajid does, which I've interviewed him some time back. So I wanted to understand what goes in your mind, or if you can abstract that out, and what goes in an illustrator mind when they are like making a line drawing versus any other form, right? Or you can take any two examples of illustration, and what happens there. Is it a subjective call? Is it according to the brief? Like I wanted to understand that.
Line drawing versus color, that.
Yeah, solid color. This is one instance, but you can have other examples also.
See, I like when I draw like a line drawing, see, because my work is very form based. Like I really like to explore the form when I'm sketching or drawing or like drawing. So for me, line drawing is more about balancing of form, or like the negative positive space, and also it's also about like how you create like dimension in like from only like a single color, or maybe your stroke size can be different, like so when you're creating something with a single color stroke, it's more about like a form thing than a and I think also about like the color adds an like a third dimension to it. So color is like an added like an advantage, you can say.
So sorry to interrupt, but I can take a step back and ask you that what all components form an illustration. If you can set that, then probably new dimensions can emerge. Yeah,
I think first thing for me is like the composition of the illustration plays like a very important role in the whole thing. So what are you composing? How your elements are laid out on like like a given surface. So that composition is like the main. I think like the way I see the illustration is mainly the composition, and then it also about the color or the color balance. I think these are the two major factors, and also the style of drawing, like how like. So if you're drawing it for like a luxury client, your drawing has to look luxurious, like so. And
so does that mean lesser strokes?
Lesser strokes. It can be very sleek drawing, or it can be very evocative, or it can be anything. But if you're again drawing for a kiddie client, then obviously your drawing has to look kiddie and cute, you know. So that also depends on the topic, what topic you are exploring, or what topic you are giving. And also and also talking about color adds like a third dimension to it, and maybe so basically it's almost like an emotional layer to it, like, to a drawing. And also color can also impact your illustration like a lot more. You can change the whole feel of the illustration just changing like one color. So,
correct.
Yeah.
If you have any instances or examples of your work, because from my my exposure to illustration, I have seen how Shopify has done their illustration, or how Airbnb tries to handle their illustrations.
Correct.
Right? So if you have any instance in your work which you have done, and which like the brief was given in a particular way, but you visualize it slightly different, and then you kept adding layers, removing layers,
correct.
And it altogether had a different impact, maybe for a luxury brand or anything.
So I think the way I approach like the brand illustrations are like I also select like the colors or topic inspired from the brand itself, because the illustration has to serve the brand first, and then your own personal likings, So I think so I like to give example about like the Saint Amand illustrations I did. So Saint Amand is like a luxury service for the Lodha real estate company. So their whole color palette was like their whole brief was to make like a luxurious like a series of 7 luxurious illustrations, which will give like a idea about what services they have. So their identity had like a frame in it. So I took that idea forward, and I created all 7 illustration in that frame,
Okay.
sort of. And the color scheme was like gold and blue, because their brand color was dark blue. So then like the illustration has to look like luxurious. So we selected a color palette which can evoke like a luxury. So we went ahead with gold and blue, and the whole illustration looked very luxurious and very like spaced out nicely, put it in a center. So that so that's like one example.
Yeah. I think if I can add some visuals to this podcast, it will connect. So moving forward on the same lines, like what is the process of picking a color palette for a particular, obviously as you mentioned, it depends on the brand color also.
Correct.
But for me at least, currently I'm working in Book My Show, and I'm dealing with few illustrators, and it becomes very tough for me also to give a brief, because how do you differentiate, or what are the boundaries, or are there any boundaries between icon, a rich icon, and a completely illustration, right? So the dimension changes, the complexity changes, and the levels also change. So how do you differentiate that, and how do you then define that, like say 100 by 100 pixels dimension wala illustration is or a graphic is an illustration and it needs several layers as opposed to icon. So if you can just tell something about those things.
I think about the icons and everything. I think like it all depends on how much time you're giving it to one illustration. Like for example, if you observe like a press ad, you actually give like more than like 30 seconds to it. But in case of icon, you hardly give like a fraction of second to it. Like, you know.
Correct.
So the whole simplicity of the illustration is also depend on the usage of the illustration. Like what usage that particular illustration has. You know. So it like. So I think that's the one parameter. Another parameter is also I think starting with a like a simple 2-3 colors always helps. I think like palette wise, and also it also like selection of color is also very intuitive. Like it changes from person to person. Like somebody may like shades of pinks or like, you know, or maybe like magentas more than shades of, but I think it's also depend on the brand you're working for. Your usage of the illustration is where, like for example, you're creating an icon for like a big ad, so that icon should have like a simplicity of color that can't like evoke too much than like, you know,
the rest of the
like,
page,
yeah,
or
rest
whatever,
of the page. So it depends on the usage of the illustration and also some intuition. Yeah. So I normally choose my colors in like mostly like in intuitive manner in like my personal work. But commercial work, obviously, like it has to balance everything, like brand, this, or maybe there might be several factors involved. Yeah.
So you also deal with a lot of other designers in LOCOPOPO, right? So have you seen any pattern that this is just my intuition and my gut feeling that there are certain personalities within an artist which as a human being itself, and that's how they pick their color palette, irrespective of the brand color, right? Some use very vibrant colors, some use very pastel colors.
Correct.
So is this a good quality within an illustrator to switch different colors, different say hues of color completely, and that makes you a versatile illustrator as opposed to going deeper into the same palette and playing around with the same shades? Is there any
No, I think it totally depends on what kind of illustration you're creating. Like for example, you're doing a commercial project, then obviously you have to be slightly versatile. You can't use the same colors for every client, like, you know, that way. And also in like personal illustration, I think it's better to have your own taste of colors, which also defines your personality. Like, you know, as an illustrator, I use only bold, bright colors, like for example, you know. So then ultimately that becomes your iconic style. You know. Yeah, like style also has like a lot of dimensions to it. Style is also like the way you draw or the way you use colors. So it also depends on you're doing it purely for your personal use or you're doing it for commercial use, or like, you know. But yeah, obviously, like if you're working for like a commercial thing, then obviously you have to be versatile and you can't be very choosy about your colors because brand will demand something else and you will deliver something else. That shouldn't clash. So I think,
but what does like a career roadmap, this might be slightly technical question, but I would love to know your thoughts on that. Is there any career roadmap for an illustrator? I'll tell you why, because this is my personal challenge in my current organization also, because you start off with a visual designer, you then become a illustrator, you then become a art director, creative director. So is there some sort of a roadmap, as in like, does illustrator in his entire life does hands-on?
No, actually, illustrator, I think like for the start of the career, I think anyone should use illustration as a strength.
Okay.
And like you also can start like full-time illustration as a freelance, but I think it's much more difficult to survive like a full-time illustrator. But yeah, I mean, if you have the constant workflow coming in, then there is no issue. But if you are only surviving on like a freelance illustration, it's slightly difficult to get like the more and more work. Like obviously your work has to have that power. But yeah, I mean, if you are working at some place like as a visual designer, then you should use your illustration as a strength, like like to support your design. And also I think like one advice that I would like to give is, I think like illustrator should be able to art direct his own illustration, because that makes like a
big difference.
Lot of a difference. Because like sometimes illustrator just like illustrator's role is not just to draw a piece of work. Like like his role is also to visualize where my illustration is going. If it's a publication illustration, how that illustration is basically looking on the page. What is the page color? What is the typo coming along with it? So he should be able to understand the whole politics of illustration, like rather than only looking at the drawing part of it.
Correct.
So I think initially designer should use illustration as his strength, like while working at places.
And still illustrator or demand for illustrator is still prevalent in the ad agency world, like because when I started it was generally a pair between a copywriter and an illustrator, right? So is that still continuing, or how has, because of Instagram and other places, how has illustrators growing in the market?
I think illustration have become more accessible now, because earlier it used to be only for advertising world, but now I think every brand or every small little brand wants illustration in their Instagram page or wherever, like on their website. They need a slightly different style than others.
Correct.
So I think the usage of the illustration has become like a lot more than it was earlier. Earlier it used to be only illustrator will work at ad agency, like that used to be like the whole logic. But now at every like illustrator, like the demand of the illustration is all over.
Correct,
so I think the
obviously because of the different platforms.
Everywhere.
Cool. I would like to just have two last questions. With again, this could be my own eco system where I'm like resonating with certain type of work or the kind of artwork which I am following. But is there any growing trend of abstract art or minimalism? Like what are the general trends? Again, it's a very typical media type question, but are there any trends which you have seen over the last 2 decades or 1 decade, and where is it heading towards in terms of illustration style? So part 1 question, and the second is actually let's address this first, and then
I think there are always like a trends of illustration. So I think the whole simplicity and the whole minimalism comes from like the software influence, because also the software also influence you as an illustrator. Like for example, people like a lot of illustrators use like an Illustrator or CorelDRAW or like any vector softwares. So automatically they end up creating like a simple graphics, So I think that's why I think there is this trend of creating like a minimal sort of an art like everywhere. But yeah, I mean it also depends on your personal choice. Like some illustrators like to paint, like like a properly 3D
brush paint,
brush paint, like a slightly traditional approach. So I think anything is cool. Just that you should enjoy it.
Correct.
I think as an illustrator you should enjoy the whole mood of it. So I think then
that actually lands up in very naturally into my second last question, which was since you said that it is governed to a certain extent by the type of software also you're using. So is there any way to learn illustration on your own? Because you come from JJ, right? So you're a academically and a classically trained person.
Correct.
So, and in bunch of interviews which I've done in the past, I've seen different types of people from different schools of thought, right? One from a classical gharana style as opposed to like just exploring their own medium. So is illustration so complex or so simple that it can be learned on their own? Can there be self-taught illustrators? And then what is different about them from a classically academically trained illustrator?
No, I think it's
because of the abstract forms they are getting into, right? So anatomy is not important to learn with the new trend, but is it really required? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's I think now it's like an open ground. Like you can do whatever you want. But I think before getting into like a really advanced version of the illustration, you should know like a slight basics of it. I think that's I think that's the way like the normal academic illustrator goes through, like a learning like an anatomy or shade and light or this that. I think, but sorry, what was the question?
The question is so two parts to the question. One is, can there be a self-taught illustrator? Obviously there can be, but what are the different aspects that they explore, what you see in a traditionally trained illustrator? What are the characteristics that their work shows, their overall persona shows up?
No, I think you shouldn't differentiate one with like self-taught or not self-taught. I think, but yeah, I mean self-taught artists normally are very free in their minds. So I think that gives them like an advantage of like exploring like all over, like So I think that's their main advantage. I think self-taught also, and I think illustration also I think grows in your mind as you observe like a lot of things, because self-taught artists also need to be observant about all over, like like about the illustration styles or so. I think observation is the I think the key element for all the illustrators from across. If it's self-taught or not self-taught or like traditional, non-traditional, I think it doesn't matter. I think what matters is how do you observe differently, and how do you perceive that into your own illustration, and how do you translate that into your own style. I think that's more important than if you're self-taught, not. I think that doesn't matter. Like I have seen like a lot of traditional illustrators like who are doing same work from last 10 years, like last 20 years they are doing the absolutely same kind of work. Like there is no improvement or there is no decrease. But yeah, I mean it all depends how you take it.
And when you say no increase or decrease, it's just the type of content they are creating,
content also,
or is
style
it
also,
style
it's all So I think you shouldn't be stagnant at like one point. Like your mind should be always free to explore, and I think nobody stops you from creating this illustration versus that illustration. You are absolutely free to take any style, modify any style, or like whatever colors or whatever medium you want to explore. So I think there are like many blockages in your mind as an illustrator. So I'm like traditional artist, so I should only use these mediums, or I should use use this style, like. But I think illustrators should be always free in their mind. Like there should be no barrier when it comes to style or using any medium or anything, because that's the way you can keep your mind fresh. Otherwise it becomes very boring for me to work in only one manner for rest of your life. Like it's very
restrictive.
Restrictive and limiting.
Yeah. I think I have to just slightly get into that space and then think about it, because right now I'm just an observer of illustrations. I don't do personally illustrations, so maybe there are a few dots which I'm connecting here, but yeah. So Lokesh, I would like to conclude with one last question, which is slightly to do with your LOCOPOPO studio. I'm very curious to know about why the name, and what do you do there, and how can people follow your work, and how can they get inspired from the kind of work you're doing?
So LOCOPOPO, so basically initially when I passed out, so I had created like one website called LOCOPOPO.com, and Loco was my like my name, Lokesh Karekar, and Popo was my pet name in college. So I just merged that two, and like, it was like LOCOPOPO.com, and and also I think I had a website then. And apparently that website like a lot of advertising people and a lot of my friends saw that website, and like they really liked it. So then after like 3-4 years when I was starting my own studio, or like like getting into freelance, then I thought like let's continue with that old name, and like let's continue with that name, like like if it's already established and if it's already there. So I had bought like a domain in like 2005.
Wow.
So I had that domain. So I said, okay, let's just start with that
Continue
name
with
only.
that,
So let's not change that. So that's why it's been LOCOPOPO from then. Yeah.
And what kind of work you guys take
so
up?
I think LOCOPOPO is not only like an illustration studio. It's also like a design studio. So we do like a lot of design projects and illustration projects. So that's why we have been able to survive like on like both, because only doing illustration projects is very tough, or so, and also it becomes very boring for me to only do one certain kind of project. So I like to balance between both. So I like to take projects which have illustration in design and design in illustration. So it kind of complements both. So at LOCOPOPO we do like identity design projects, or illustration for books, or design for brands, packaging design, like every kind of design projects, and also some like a large illustration projects which like publication illustration, or maybe like an advertising illustrations, or like brand illustrations for the brands. Yeah. So there are two parts of it, and another part of it is LOCOPOPO shop, where we also create like a products inspired like illustrative products. So where we use our illustration skills to use like small products like badges and totes.
I recently
and
bought one Chandrasekhar Azad, the freedom fighters
fighter,
badges which you.
So where we try to evoke like local fun topics and try to do something with it. Yeah.
Cool. So it's locopopo.com.
Yeah.
Cool. And if people have to follow your work, obviously the Audiogyan listeners must be definitely following, but in case of
Instagram, there is LOCOPO Design is the Instagram handle.
And there you keep publishing your work.
Maybe we upload whatever is like the recent work of our studio.
Cool. I think this is a good note to end, but I'm very sure that this, like, I have few more questions, but just given the time we have, and it's just getting more interesting to document more and more illustrators like you and know the insights and the world of illustration in general. So thank you once again for giving your time, and it was fun talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, bye. That's it.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher, or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on Audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.
Hello! It's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On This Round is on Me, Gauri is joined by Shweta Nanda. They talk about the financial independence and how it is to be a woman entrepreneur. On Anish Thing, Anish welcomes ultra-marathon runner Shivani Gharat. Shivani shares her journey of how she ran her first marathon, the mindset of a runner, and what it actually takes to run a full marathon. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Akash and Shreyas talk about the Korean band BTS serving in the military and its repercussions. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Wing Greens and their latest acquisitions and about the Indian sexual wellness market. And on Shunya One, Sheila Datya is joined by Dinika Bhatia, CEO and founder of Nuttigritties. They talk about coming from a business family and Dinika's journey in creating healthy and guilt-free snacking. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have some exciting new merch out there for you. Also, do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do remember to spread the word about these shows and any other shows you might be listening to. Appreciate them, rate them, and review them wherever you are listening to them. You can also check out all our other shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, Kotak Privy League Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thanks, guys. Without you, this would not be possible.
Do you often find yourself surrounded by conversations about Web3, blockchain, NFTs, DAOs? What are these terms and how do they affect our future on the internet? So many questions, but don't worry, we've got answers to all your questions. Hi, I'm Eklavya Bhattacharya, and on our show Future Proofing, we try to decode the impact of these future technologies on various industries with experts and tech enthusiasts. Tune into new episodes coming out every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app and the website, or wherever you get your podcasts from.